All right, got it. All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Katie, are we missing the other Laura too? Katie, are you?
So Laura just logged on. So the only person that we are missing from our new and emerging crew is Deborah. And she hasn't been officially appointed yet.
Oh, okay.
So the other person that we are missing today is Joe Chicky. He is the newly appointed representative from the Mansfield Resident State Trooper's Office. He let me know that he won't be able to be here today. So we have a new Joe to replace our old Joe, even though it's not our old Joe, but I'm excited to meet our new Joe when we meet our new Joe next month.
Okay,
but
good.
We officially have a quorum now.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And have you all had a chance to review the minutes? And if so, and there's no changes or additions or deletions, I'll entertain a motion to file them away. So I need a motion. Laura, you're muted.
I'll make a motion to file them.
All right, good. I'll need a second, Larry. So
I'll second that.
Okay, great. All right. Katie, you're on.
I'm on. Wonderful. So happy October. We're almost all the way through it already because it's our like weird wonky month of being the third month or the third week rather than the second week. So our activities report is from kind of the start of school and just the month of September, but we are certainly in fuller swing now than we were right at the end of September, which is our report out. So we've been back into startup mode for bringing things back to in person. And then some things we're continuing online. So the things that we're continuing online are the Out of the Blue support group that Sarah Dufresne runs for perinatal and postpartum mood and anxiety disorders and new moms in general, and it just being kind of like an open and welcoming group. And that's really had a lot of success in being online versus in person, just removing a lot of barriers that new moms have of transporting itty bitty babies. So that's been having a continued good involvement, more so even than it was pre-pandemic in person. And Book Buddies is another program that we're keeping virtual, just because that has been something that was really well received as a virtual intervention, with parents finding it a little bit easier to say, okay, here's my kid, here's a book, here's a contained craft activity, great, go for it. So Sarah's got her first Book Buddies of the fall scheduled this week, and they're doing days with Frog and Toad. And then for everything else in the entire universe ever, we are back to in person. So this is our first week of our offices being open for in-person sessions for families who want to come in and do in-person sessions. We still offer the telehealth for families if that's kind of their comfort level or their scheduling best fit, whatever works. We'll continue to offer that for the foreseeable future as long as folks are expressing a need for it. So we're excited to be able to bring families back into our space and have our different mitigation strategies ready to rock and roll with that. We've got all of our school-based things up and running. So Danielle is at the middle school doing counseling on Thursdays. Kelly's there on Tuesdays and Fridays. And so those kind of counseling sessions are in full swing. We've got our 2 interns who are here, who are gearing up and getting started, and we're finding all of the cases for them. They're running the X Block group check-ins on Thursdays over at MMS. So that program is back. It was one that kind of went on pause last year because X Block had to be very different for cohorting and scheduling needs, but it is back in action this year. Other things that are happening in our schools, we'll do all the middle school ones first. So we also then have our mentoring program, Big Friends, is happening at the middle school after school on Tuesdays instead of at town hall in the evening hours, to kind of allow for larger spaces for more spreading out, but it also kind of removes some potential barriers of any transportation issues since kids can just take the late bus home. So we're excited to be trying things a little bit differently this year. And, you know, we were able to start off Big Friends with our kickoff earlier in the month. We're meeting again today. And, you know, it's a new method of doing things, but so far so good. And And then we also have moved our after school programs of My Voice and My Pride over to the middle school for that same kind of need of having a little bit more space to spread out, being able to access the late buses, and knowing that you know, in the past, we've utilized the teen center and things at the community center. So kind of being able to take a lot of questions out of the mix and just know that if the middle school is up and running, that so are we. So those are meeting on like first and third Mondays and second and fourth Mondays. So I'm running My Pride again. We've got anywhere from like 13 to 15 kiddos who are showing up for those on a every other week basis, which has been really fun. A lot of kids that I didn't necessarily get to be connected with before, because now we're kind of having a little bit more broad exposure in the middle school, that they're joining and being connected now, which is really nice. And then our My Voice group, which is the public service announcement group that I co-facilitate with Sarah. We will have our second meeting of the year next Monday. And the topic that we are funded with through the local prevention council, that we all are, is we're still doing vaping prevention and the youth cannabis use prevention. So the kids were excited to kind of start working on that project. We're excited to kind of see where it goes. The LPC money has arrived. It is in the process of being deposited. It is more than it has been in the past. So we have a lot of creative abilities to use that specifically for prevention. So that is the grant that helps to fund primarily the My Voice group and any of the creations that group puts out in terms of tangibles, giveaways, or paid advertising that we can use. We also do have the ability to use some of those funds for the My Pride group as part of specific interventions for vulnerable populations, knowing that our LGBTQIA+ youth are more susceptible, more targeted to negative health outcomes. So we were able to write that in as part of the grant, which was nice, because in the past we haven't been able to do that. So we have a little bit more flexibility on how we spread out the LPC funding. We are still waiting to hear from DCF on the Youth Service Bureau enhancement and Youth Service Bureau base grants. They've been a little bit slower to roll out. We have Henry here again. Hi, Henry again. But we're hoping to hear back from DCF. We don't anticipate any problems to that funding, but they just haven't dispersed it yet, or at least they haven't sent notice of disbursement. I need to follow up with finance. And then we have new programs that are in the works. So Kelly McKinney is running a social skills group over at Southeast to kind of help support some of the emerging needs there. We also have her and our intern Mackenzie getting ready for a November startup of a mother-daughter circle that they were able to get trained on in September, and they got some additional supports with that training through a scholarship program that the Circle Foundation offers. So we're really excited about that. And then we're also back in person doing our giant COPE mentoring programs at all 3 schools, and they're set up a little bit differently than they have been in the past. So in the past, we've had all grades all year. And kids just have kind of that 20 to 25-minute lunch block with their mentors to eat and do an activity and then clean up and get out to recess. And this year, to kind of facilitate the cohorting needs and the distancing needs, we got a little creative, and it's actually working out really nicely. So we're doing 2 grades in the fall and then 2 grades in the spring. So they'll be able to have twice as much time with one mentor, but it won't go all year. So they'll be able to have lunch and recess with their mentors, which is a cool way to expend the time and get a little extra kind of grown-up support on playground time to help facilitate some connections and things like that. And our kids have been really excited about it. Our mentors have been really excited about it. So those are all up and running. Other fun things.
I have a question. Yeah. So the first group, right? What do they do in the spring then? You know,
so in the spring, we'll switch grades. So we have 2 grades at each school.
Right.
That are.
What do you do with the grade that is no longer with the mentors?
So the program just won't be offered for them. So it's just kind of, we're marketing it as it's a 1 semester program. So the length of time that they're with the mentors is twice as long.
Right,
It's just condensed. So the grades in the spring who are doing it in the fall, they will just do their regular lunch and recess as they would with their whole classes. They won't have that extra pullout. But what's nice is if we don't have the same mentor group, everybody's sticking with the same mentor instead of having to switch halfway through the
Right.
year.
But you'll not run some other programming for them in the spring then?
We don't really have the capacity to kind of add an additional program into kind of the same day. So it'll just be the
Fine.
semester program for right now.
All right, thank
Um,
you. Okay,
Yeah, and we'll be curious to see what happens next year as we transition to a single school, and we'll kind of be playing with a lot of moving pieces for those programs to see how to best meet everybody when they're in the same building. So we'll be certainly getting creative as we keep inching towards the new Mansfield Elementary School, which is, I think, what they have officially named it.
is it going to be ready in time, the school?
It better be.
So Katie, yes, the answer is Mansfield Elementary School. And Ethel, and last report at the Board of Ed, they were on time.
Oh, good, good.
So, Kelly, our superintendent, meets with the committees, and so the last public report was that they were on time. So I would anticipate that would be the case.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good.
So we
It's
will
just
be
that
all
we,
excited for that.
We drove by there because it's going to be where Southeast was, right?
Mhm.
And it didn't look like it was making that much progress, but I'm glad to hear they are. So that's good.
I think they have like the live stream up on the town site where you can like watch them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have 2 sad children
Yeah.
around this issue.
Uh-huh.
2
I know
horrified
there's a
children.
lot of mixed feelings.
That Goodwin's not going to exist.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And I haven't heard what they're going to do with the old buildings yet. I think that becomes like a topic for next year once everyone is moved out of the 2 new buildings. So it'll be interesting to see what the town and Board of Ed do with those buildings and
Good.
see how it all shakes out.
Yep.
Um,
I didn't
And
mean to
then-
interrupt you, but if you could, continue, that'd be great.
I think those are the biggest updates on programming.
Okay.
Sarah Dufresne's running a really cool event this weekend. We got donations of skateboards and helmets from Journeys in Candide. So she's running a skateboard giveaway event because that's how Sarah Dufresne rolls. And she's also working with the Yukon Ticket Project again. So she's been able to give away a lot of free tickets to families to different Yukon sporting events. So it's been exciting to kind of like see humans in real life again and like be doing activities and things and stuff like that, which is nice that we're able to kind of pick that back up and keep rolling with that as the year progresses. And I think that's kind of the report out for what we've been up to for activities reports.
Okay. No, going on to old business, what's happening with the JSR, the juvenile review board?
All right. So the exciting piece of our youth diversion program is that as of September 27th, I think it was the town council meeting. September 27th, the Mansfield Town Council has authorized us to draft memorandums of understanding / memorandums of agreement with Willington and Ashford and their respective boards of first selectmen. So I am in the process of trying to make sense of some legalese templates that I've been sent to make it work for our 3 towns in the capacity that makes the most sense for organizing in a regional way. So I am working on those, and once I have them drafted, I'll be sending them to my counterparts at the other 2 YSBs. And then once we've all kind of had a chance to look at them, we'll send them on to respective attorneys for kind of their rubber stamping, and then they'll go to selectmen and town councils from that. The parallel process that we're doing in, all the nitty gritty contract things is we are recruiting for who is going to make sense to be on the board. So we are kind of reaching out to our respective schools, districts, and community members to kind of figure out who makes sense to be those supports for the diversion, and getting them connected to some restorative justice trainings that CYSA has just announced. So I included those announcements in our most recent set of attachments for the Restorative Justice 101 and the Restorative Justice 201 trainings for Larry's got them. For folks who are prospective members of the JRB or just interested in learning more about what the JRBs are. And I know the CYSA is looking to start shifting the way that we're calling them language to kind of remove the word juvenile just because of the kind of pejorative connotation to it. So we have a cool opportunity to, as we're naming our diversion program, pick and choose a name that like will be good for the long haul and doesn't necessarily have those same connotations. We haven't gotten quite to naming convention yet, but we will. So we have actually been able to connect with Kelly Lyman and Sharon Canoyer over at Region 19, and they have both kind of designated who they think makes the most sense to represent their specific schools, the Mansfield Middle School and E.O. Smith as representatives on that restorative justice board. And they're passing along those training opportunities to those folks. So I know for Mansfield Middle School, it sounds like the designees are Eileen and Christina. So it's the two school counselors who split the grades. So this way, having both trained, they can both be there to support whatever grade presents, which is a really great fit. And then over at EO, I believe they've designated Lou and their new hire into a new position that's a family liaison position, Omar Rosario. So they're going to be getting a few of their admin staff trained in the restorative justice model. And then their family liaison person is going to be in a different training, not in this restorative justice one, but they'll have a good grounding of what restorative justice models are going to look like and how do we really kind of build this diversion program in a way that is going to be meaningful. So I know we're also looking at checking in with folks who have also expressed interest. So I know Deborah, who's not here, and Lisa, who is here, had also expressed interest in potentially participating in those future board membership positions. So, you know, certainly sign up if you haven't already done these. Lisa, I think you might have already done these a time or two. But they're really, like, Joe Bremer is a thumbs up guy on restorative justice. He's like the name in it. So CYSA having him is really cool to be able to do those presentations. So things are moving and going. Our resident state trooper, Sergeant King, is very much supportive, and you know, he's on board for being the law enforcement representative for the Mansfield Resident State Trooper's Office. We'll be working with probation to see if they have anyone available. But even if they don't, it's not necessarily a requirement. So I've reached out to Jason Moriarty over at the Willimantic Juvenile and Family Services, and kind of once we know what our exact timing of the day is going to be, he's going to see if it'll fit into anybody's kind of flexible time and hour, since they can't go into overtime. But they're all pretty familiar with the restorative justice models that a lot of the YSBs are using right now. So
Katie,
exciting things.
how old does a young person have to be? Like, what's the cutoff age?
So there's really not a cutoff age down. In Connecticut, they've been working on raising the age of who can be charged with the crime, because I think it used to be something ridiculous like 7 or 8. So they've been trying to get it up to 12, but I don't think they've been able to get it all the way up to 12 yet.
So
but that's still something they're working on.
So how old can a person be to be referred to JSRB?
So typically youth service bureaus will see youth up to the age of 18 for restorative justice models. There is also a raise the age initiative that is happening beyond 18 to try and have young adults up to 21 eligible to not go through adult services, but that's still all a state level work in progress. And I don't know necessarily that youth service bureaus are going to be the ones who get tapped for that kind of 3-year or so gap once it does go through. But there's a lot of things that still need to fall into place with the state to raise that age.
The reason I ask is because if you're over 16, you could be referred to the adult courts. So you
Mhm.
might want to talk to adult probation also, because they handle those
Yeah.
cases. Okay,
Well, and a lot of times, for kids who are being referred to adult court, it's typically for something that might not be seen at a restorative justice board. So if
Okay.
it's something that has a serious violent offense to it, that tends to be what gets handed up to the adult courts. And those tend to be cases that aren't seen necessarily through restorative justice practices. If there's major damages or bodily harm, those do tend to end up having to go through the court system.
okay. Well,
Katie,
thank
can
you.
I interject a little bit for what you were saying about age of jurisdiction? It
Yes.
was 7. We advocated very hard to get it to go to 12. And I don't want to say we lost, but we lost. And they compromised and met us at the age of 10. So we think some of that came down to just doing being more proactive and some more education surrounding juvenile justice and restorative practice. So next legislative session will work to kind of get them to go from age 10 to 12. But right now we went from 7 to 10. So I'll take it, but we really were hoping for the age of 12 and to not have our younger elementary school students arrested and sent to JRBs.
Okay, thank you. All right, you want to talk about the
I have a question.
Sure.
So would there be roles and responsibilities for members of our entity to be a part of the JRB?
So for us as the advisory board to be part of the JRB,
Yeah,
they really have the opportunity to function separately, but if there's an overlap that we want to specifically create, we can.
Yeah.
So for, I would call them like the day-to-day responsibilities of the diversion board, they're going to be more tasked with, showing up at the, time that they're supposed to, seeing the cases, and then kind of following up with the kids in whatever their role is. So, say it was a Mansfield Middle School kiddo, Eileen or Christina Lee would be kind of following up with the kid in school to make sure all of the things that they need to do the diversion successfully, they have access to, and kind of building in check-ins.
okay.
But we, in our capacity as the advisory board, we have the role of helping to advocate if we need additional advocacy. Right now, we've got, I think, a lot of folks on deck. If we need to kind of think about outside the box recruiting of additional board members, I know one of the roles that a lot of times people have found helpful is members of the local faith community, or other kind of community stakeholders that we, in our roles as youth service advisory board members, like we might know who those people are and have good connections to them to say like, hey, we really think like you would be a valuable person to sit on this diversion board to help support youth in our community. And so you guys being kind of the community experts would be able to kind of help me know a little bit more about who you think might be a good fit as we're building that team. And then certainly if there's an opportunity for funding, there's some roles for us as the advisory board to kind of come together and come up with ideas on how to best present things, and any other thoughts of what we need as diversion options. So one of the things, and it'll come up a little bit in new business, is kind of tapping you guys for what are the emerging trends? What are we seeing? What are we expecting? What do we need to plan for? But I don't want to jump ahead because then I'll get in trouble for not following the agenda.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. You want to talk about advisory committee recruitment?
Sure. So we are officially all on this call appointed members. It is very exciting. All of the forms have gone through, and then we're still just waiting on Deborah Holgren's appointment. And then we also have not yet met on our board Trooper Joe Chicky, but he is the new official appointee from the law enforcement representing agency. So he's been officially appointed, but not here today. But we are pending Deborah's appointment, a fully appointed board, which is really exciting because it's been a while since we've had all of our slots full and fully appointed. So I am very thankful that you guys are all here, and that you're willing to serve, and that we have some new folks joining us, because it is really exciting to be able to kind of pull from more experts, because that's really what you guys are here to represent. You guys are the experts in your different slot appointments and kind of your field, so to speak.
It's also nice to have different viewpoints too, new viewpoints.
Yeah,
So that's great.
absolutely.
Well, thank you. Moving on to new business. Is there any new business?
So the new business is looking at that excitement of having new faces here, and really wanted to make sure that you all here in the advisory board can have opportunities at each meeting to share what you're seeing as the emerging trends, the needs, whether it's related to youth justice, whether it's related to mental health, whether it's related to pandemic needs, and really looking at making sure each meeting we're checking in with you all to kind of hear from you and having that kind of carved out space. So I have it listed as new business this time, but with the advisory board's consent and support, I'd like to kind of set it up as a recurring item.
Okay, sounds okay. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
I'm comfortable with that. Good idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Well, thank you. Is there anything else? Does anybody
Does anybody have any trends that they want to talk
that
about?
too, yeah.
I have a couple.
Okay.
Vaping has been one that's been a big issue. And then there's been more, this is more Jsrb related, but disturbing the peace, and threats. So kids aren't regulating their emotions and perhaps saying things that they should not out of anger, and then having schools have to have like manifestation meetings, and really, I guess, trying to support the families through that. And then there was one other, and I completely lost it now that I started talking about manifestations. But it's really been like that, just disturbing the peace, saying things that perhaps they should not say out of dysregulation, and kind of teaching them how to regulate. When I think of the other one, I will either put it in the chat or say it.
And you said the first one was vaping, right, Lisa? Okay.
Yes. Oh, I have it now. Not really sure if it's like the service related, but the other topic has been, and I'm sure we've all seen it in the news, but I'm hearing it more and more, is the utilization of emergency rooms for our mental health crises for our youth. And really like what that looks like and how long they're there, and the lack of available beds, and what that means for schools and for families. So I think that's most of, like, that's throughout the whole region, but definitely vaping has been that. And then the not regulating with that, coupled with that anxiety of those kids that did really, really well, just like during virtual, because they had that anxiety, or perhaps they had that bullying going on in school, and they did really, really well. And now that they're back in person and kind of that honeymoon period is over, they're really starting to see more behaviors and more struggles from those youth, as well as the staff they're struggling too, like trying to teach in a pandemic. So
Yeah.
still in a pandemic.
Lisa, what's your
I have one of those too.
Lisa, what's your service area? I'm just I didn't get your background, or I don't recall.
So I cover 58 towns. So I cover anything that goes to Middletown DCF, Norwich DCF, and Willimantic DCF. So any of those, pretty much from the top northeast, from like Thompson all the way down to like Old Saybrook, Essex, Clinton, and then all of Middletown County, or Middlesex County, Portland, and East Hampton. So I get to hear when I'm giving reports and like suggestions. I'm mindful of like what meeting I'm at, so like what area we're covering.
Yeah.
Because it's different throughout. There's some similarities between the region in the different towns, but there are other things that stand out more specifically for like the Mansfield, this kind of area. And those are the ones.
Who do you work for?
I work for Favor.
What is
Um,
Favor?
So we're a statewide nonprofit based out of Wethersfield. We work with youth and families that have mental health and behavioral health differences. So we have a couple of different programs. I'm from the Family Systems Manager program. So there's one of us in each DCF region. And we kind of help families navigate systems and teach them how to advocate in whatever setting it be, whether through juvenile justice or sometimes school, DCF, other systems. And then we have a peer support program, and they really work with the family on the educational piece of it, supporting them through like IEPs and 504s and being a working team with the school for their kid. And then we have a medical home initiative, which helps youth and families that have more complex medical needs. There's some respite funding. They're able to help get them a lower payment for like medicines and that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, is there anything else? I guess we're all set, huh? This was a good meeting. Thank you, everybody. Got a lot of information. Does anyone else have anything else before we adjourn? All right.
I know
I'll-
Laura and Larry, I had heard you kind of start, but I don't know if everything
Yeah.
kind of got covered.
No, I just wanted to say thank you to Lisa for sharing her perspective.
Yeah.
I think some of those things, we see particularly, we've seen an increase need for behavioral supports. I mean, the reality is we're not to the level where we're having manifestation hearings for students. We haven't had cases of vaping. So some of those things we haven't seen in our community at the middle school level I can speak to. I think regionally or in what I've seen through my work is there's increased need for support for kids. And that was a trend that was trending upward prior to the pandemic. And I think that has been exacerbated and has sped up some of that. I think as educators, we try to mitigate some of that. In the last couple of years, we've developed CARES teams where we reach out to families, and we've also, built in social emotional learning blocks to help, do some preventative work and build skills around behavior and emotional supports. Similarly, how we support and teach academics. So we're trying to teach these social emotional skills, but I would agree that we've seen an uptick in need for behavioral supports and direct instruction around that. So I think that's something that we're contending with and will continue. I think we're not alone in that. Other communities are experiencing that. Lisa, what you shared about emergency room usage for students in crisis was intriguing to me. It's not a commonality that we're sending students to the emergency room, but we recognize that does happen in our community, whether it's a referral working with 211 and then we end up in an emergency room, or a family doing that. So I was just curious if you could speak more to that, of what you're seeing. Is that frowned upon by emergency room folk? Is that not the right step? Just like you to speak to that if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine. The CHDI, Connecticut's Health Development Institute, just sent a survey out for families, kind of because they're recognizing that they're overloaded in their emergency rooms, and there is historically been not a lot of beds available for kids that need it. So they just sent a survey out. I can share it with you guys if you want to just look at it. But they're really seeing an influx of people utilizing the emergency room for mental health, whether it be the families themselves or schools or other providers are utilizing it, because there's been some, from what I understand, some struggle connecting with clinicians in behavioral health because they're so inundated right now. So the default has been kind of using the emergency room.
Yep.
And kids are spending, I don't even want to tell you how long in emergency rooms.
Hours? Yeah.
Days.
Days.
We're talking
Days?
days. Like
Days.
yeah, days, like a lot of days, like some of them passed like the 3 week period
Okay.
in the emergency room because they're waiting for a bed. But like I said, some of my understanding is that it's that everybody's in crisis.
Yeah.
And there's our clinicians and behavioral health are starting to become overloaded, especially when you're looking at some of the more like rural areas, trying to access clinicians and having to travel and whatever that looks like. And then you add in the insurance piece. So that makes it more difficult too. But I know that there's definitely been an increase for kids in the emergency room, and they're really just trying to look at kind of the whys and like how we can, what are ideas for right now to at least take some of that pressure off of the ERs and off of families. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. Thank you. I just
Okay.
was curious. Thank you.
Yeah, Laura.
I don't know who answers this, but does Mansfield have any control over whether the school bus drivers are vaping while they're driving? Just because my kids report their school bus driver vaped before COVID while he was
Yeah.
driving the bus.
We should talk offline about that concern, and I will address that.
Okay,
Thank you.
I didn't know if that went through.
I mean,
It was for the high school and for us, and if we're gonna be cracking down on the vaping with the kids, and if we're starting to see it.
yeah,
They-
no one, you should not be vaping, just for clarity. No one, regardless.
No
of
one
age, should be vaping on school property or on a bus. And this is in relation to a high school concern?
both.
Okay.
I mean, the
Okay.
younger kid doesn't go on the bus right now because of her readjustment issues with going back from COVID. So the high school kid is still talking about it.
Okay.
Well, is there anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I need a second. Thank you.
Second,
both of you.
yep.
And thank you, everybody, for coming today, and hopefully we'll have new people again next meeting in November.
Yeah, we'll be excited to hopefully have the whole crew.
Yeah. Well, everybody have a good month.
You
Hey,
too.
You too.
You
Thank you.
too.
Bye.
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 See you later, Henry.